Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Manley, President and CEO of Maryland Progressive Institute, located at 4509 East Monument Street in Baltimore. Maryland Progressive Institute is a non-public special education school whose design is to provide academic education and social training for youth who are not able to keep up in the public school sector. I moved here a little over 2 years ago, and we were approved by the state of Maryland almost 2 years ago. And although we are a highly professional organization, well vetted, um, the Good Old Boys Network of Baltimore will not allow my school to be assigned students. Well, who are the Good Old Boys Network? I first heard the terminology when during a meeting with the Board of Education at the state level 2 years ago, when I was informed that the Good Old Boys Network would not allow the students to be assigned to my school. Even though we're fully approved, we weren't a part of the network. And as I began to inquire a little more and more as time permitted, I discovered that the Good Old Boys Network is made up of those people who have been able to monopolize the education dollars here in the city of Baltimore. When I last checked, monopoly is still illegal. That coupled with the fact that Baltimore is one of the most racist states in the United States. And because my school, Maryland Progressive Institute, is the only black-owned and operated school in the Baltimore City public school system, it makes it doubly difficult for me to be given consideration, despite the fact that there are hundreds of kids who are not even in school. These services, mind you, are provided by and paid for by the federal government, the state, and the Baltimore City public school system. But the Baltimore City public school system has been alleging for the last year and a half that our children are better served by being kept on campuses where you have the general population. Sadly, these campuses are the ones who put our children in the predicaments that they are in. We have kids graduating from high school with a high school diploma, still functioning at second, third, or fourth grade level without the ability to read or even count money. Well, is anybody concerned about that? I think not, because here in Baltimore, it's about the money. It's not about the well-being of our children. Now, your more influent families are able to send their children to schools out in Baltimore County. But in the city of Baltimore, where you have 83% of the kids black, brown, and a few socioeconomically disadvantaged whites, I mean, this is it. And as a result of that, a blind eye and deaf ear will always be turned to the needs of Baltimore City. Crime is at an all-time high. Does anybody care? No, because they don't care about the children. Our children in Baltimore City are being prepped for the prison system. It is extreme to the point where kids 4 and 5 years old are being declared mentally ill to justify their being put on medications for psychological problems. So if a kid is now enrolled in kindergarten or first grade level, well, the first grade level, and they're not able to count to 100 or spell their name, they are considered and deemed mentally retarded. So then that enables some psychiatrists to justifiably then assign that kid or put that kid on psychotropics to control the behavior when there is no bad behavior. So you have a school system that is being run and operated by the good old boys network, mobster families. Let's just keep it real. And your kids, our kids, are not important. There are 13 special education non-public schools in the city of Baltimore, 12 white. I am the first, and I have one kid after almost 2 years. And I want to remind America, especially Baltimoreans, that we were not privy to come into this country by way of Ellis Island, cruising up to the dock on nice, spiffy, shiny ships. We were snatched up out of the jungles of Africa and sent here on slave ships. And we first touched ground in Jamestown, Virginia. So the privileges were different. Our foreparents built this country with free labor and were discriminated against more than 400 years, and the same discrimination continues today. It's just that it's a little more covert-like. For example, if you go to the Baltimore City public school system, you'll find that there is a very large number of African-American administrators, and they're nothing more than window dressing. You have 4 or 5 white people running the entire education system, handling $2 or $3 billion a year of monies that are supposed to benefit the special need kids. That money is being diverted very often into other channels that are non-educational. And let me be clear about something else. I do not allege by the stretch of anyone's imagination that the majority of America, white America, is racist. That is not the case, because 80% of the whites are faced with the same dilemmas and challenges as are blacks and other minorities in this country. So it's not about racism in the general sense. Unfortunately, 10% of the wealth is controlled by whites in Baltimore. And these are the whites who reflect on one thing. You are either among the haves or the have-nots. And in their minds, 80% of the whites are in the same boats. They're no better or worse than blacks, Hispanics, Asians, or anybody else. It is a sad day. We have one student, have a beautiful school at 4509 East Monument Street. And when I contacted the executive board at Baltimore City Public School System, of course, everybody tries to justify why I'm sent no schools, no students. The reason is they can't, because the word has been put out that nobody comes into Baltimore unless they come in under the 5 families, monster families, which control the cash flow that is supposedly in position to benefit special needs children. You know, in 1963, when I joined the Navy, on graduation day, as I stood and saluted the flag as the Star-Spangled Banner was played, I stood there crying. And one of my boot camp buddies asked me, "Manley, why are you crying?" And I was ashamed to tell him, but I knew what I was feeling. And what I was feeling was, I was so proud to be in that uniform and looking at that American flag, which I still love today. I was crying because I loved an America that would not love me back. I served 4 years in service, well decorated, Vietnam veteran, disabled veteran, an ordained minister, ordained Baptist minister in 1988, retired senior probation officer with the Reserve Board, and a business developer for the last 30 years. My school, New West Technical Academy, was highly successful in Los Angeles. I understand the business. I'm not new to business as an entrepreneur. Even though too often in this country, when blacks are not able to achieve, the powers that be try to paint a picture of us of not being competent enough to understand the rigors of running a business or what it's really about. And then to add an even greater insult to industry is the white powers that be understand full well that the way you control the majority of blacks is by putting a handful of blacks over them who then report back to the powers that be. For 400 plus years, we built this country. We've never done anything to the powers that be, to white folk, to deserve this kind of treatment. The only thing I want to do here in the city of Maryland is to provide the academic education and social training for at-risk youth. That's a good thing. I've never been to jail. My reputation is squeaky clean. I understand the business work, and I also understand what they are doing, and what they're doing is illegal. After a couple meetings with the Baltimore City Public School System, and after listening to all of their excuses, I went to the governor. And of course, the governor's office, I'm not saying Governor Hogan understands everything that's going on, but people in his office understand what is happening with those who have monopolized the system, because they too endorsed that monopoly. So everybody passes the buck. For example, during my first meeting with the state, I was told by a state official that I would not be sent students, even though we were merely in the process of being established as a school. I was told that I would not be sent students because I was black. And I'm so far beyond the thought of racism, it's unbelievable. And of course, after we were given a black president twice in a row, I just operate on the misassumption that we have plowed through the racism that's held back African Americans and other brown and black people. We, along with the Indians, are the only group that cannot be deported. We have nowhere to go. We didn't come here by way of Ellis Island. We were snatched up out of the jungles and sold into slavery. We came here to America and first landed at Jamestown, Virginia, 1619. And we're still paying the price of having come from four parents who built this country on their blood, sweat, and tears without compensation. Be that as it may, I'm not mad about a former enslavement. You can unring the bell, but what we can do is focus on where we go from here. And we have to free our minds of being tied to the memory gateposts of slavery so that we can move forward. Most foreigners who come to this country look at black people like we're the consummate buffoons. We're too stupid to understand business, do anything. What they don't understand is the controlling class of white America has its foot on our necks, and we are denied economic opportunity. These businesses pay a lot of money. It's okay for the white folk to make the money, but me as the primo black, I need to stay in the N-words lane, if you get my drift. I'm not supposed to be doing that. So I was told a week ago that if I want to have kids, students referred to my school, Maryland Progressive Institute, it's going to be necessary for me to go to one of the 12 schools that are controlled by the 5 major monopolizers. I'm going to have to go and give up my contract and then agree to work for them under my contract, which then would mean that they would take over my business. They would bill Baltimore City Public Schools for the services that Maryland Progressive Institute rendered, and we would be given the peanuts that were left may be enough to just run the school on. It is unfair. I submit to you that I am anything but racism. Racist. I don't think racism. And it's too far in the day for African Americans to have to endure these hardships just because of hatefulness. I'm not mad with the white folk for having enslaved my foreparents. You can't unring the bells. Nothing you can do about it. And at the same time, I'm not upset with the Africans. And I can't be upset with whites without being upset with the Africans, because like the whites bought us and put us in slavery, the Africans are the ones, our foreparents, our kin are the ones who chased us down in the jungle, put us in jail cells, held us in bondage until these schooners and ships showed up so they could sell us and ship us here to the United States of America. It's a terrible thing. We are open. The school is operating every day with one student. And what do? Well, the Baltimore City public school system has all fingers crossed, hoping that I'll soon go out of business. And if I don't, I'm losing about $33,000 a month, which means that there'll come a time when common sense will dictate that I must close the doors and move on. But before doing that, I want you to know that the entire generation of our inner city schools here in Baltimore is being sacrificed. Kids are being declared mentally retarded at age 4 and 5, so that the Good Old Boys Network can justifiably put them on medication, put their minds to sleep, and these kids will never graduate, and they will keep walking across the stage on graduation day to the tune of pomp and circumstance, receiving a diploma while reading at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade level without the ability to even count money. I'm asking America, I'm asking Baltimoreans in particular, give us a chance. Let us through. This is the only black-owned and operated special ed non-public school in the city of Maryland. Let us through. Let us through like you let the Jews through. Let us through like you let the Irish through. Let us through like you let the Italians through. Let us through like you let the Greeks through. Let us through like you let those who come under the umbrella of the Catholic order. Let us through. I'm not saying these people are racist or prejudiced, but these are the people somewhere in the mix of them, and they know who they are. They picked up the phone after I was assigned my first student and told somebody to remove them from the referral list. So we have not been given a single referral in a year and 2 months. And one would operate on the assumption that we would no longer be in business, but we aren't, because we are that serious and that desperate to reach out and give a hand up. Not a hand out, but a hand up to our kids who are floundering without hope, kids who have no direction, while we turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to their needs. Our kids are crying out. Baltimore has the highest murder rate per capita among young people of any city in the United States. I wanted to come into the war zone and do something about our conditions. So I put my head on the chopping block, even though I might add that I've been threatened 3 times, for my continued efforts in the hope of being able to be referred as students. By law, they have to send me students, but in reality, does anybody give a tinker's darn about the law in Baltimore City Public Schools? No. And the Negroes down there do what they're told to do. They sit around and they grin and snicker and do the dance and keep their mouths shut because that's all they can do. And the moment they begin to get out of their lane, they're going to be demoted or transferred. How dare they? Because the majority of the students they're hurting are African American students. We're going nowhere in a hurry. We were able to turn to so many people during the civil rights movement and ask for help, and tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars were poured into the movement. Thanks to white folk. Black people didn't have the money to bail us out of jail when we were incarcerated for protesting, picketing, whatever. I'm asking you, our Jewish brothers and sisters, help us. Make that call. I'm asking our Greek brothers, our Irish brothers, our Catholic sisters and brothers. I'm asking anyone who can, call these people and say, give Maryland Progressive Institute a chance. I shudder to think that I have to look at going to foreign countries on my knees and begging for financial support so that we can begin the process of educating our children here in the city of Baltimore. Did you know that the majority of kids 8, 9, and 10 years old who are exposed to drugs here in the city of Baltimore are exposed to them on school campuses? Well, I have a nice little quaint school here. There isn't enough room for kids to run off and hide out and smoke their little drugs. One of the major problems they have on public school campuses is random sex. A lot of the girls are being bullied into having sex with boys on campuses, and guess what? The new move is for kids to take their video cameras and film pornography of these 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids on public school campuses. I made a report to Baltimore City Public School, by the way, a year and a half ago as a result of something I had learned about which made me sick. They got upset with me and quickly swept the write-up under the rug. Nobody wants to deal with problems. And the Negroes downtown are in those positions to do one thing: to protect the white folk who are the shot callers from us. And again, in Baltimore City Public School System, which also directs the assignments of children with special needs into schools like this, they're the ones who are not interested in addressing the needs of the kids. So I'm saying to, again, people, whoever put the word out to remove me from the referral list, you've done something that's immoral, unethical, and illegal. And the people downtown, especially the African Americans, don't refer kids to this school because they can't. Also discovered that the Baltimore City Public School System is in violation of the Robinson-Patman Price-Fixing Act. And that's another conversation for another time. But I've gone to the governor's office. Am I optimistic? After 2 years of fighting this battle every day, I'm almost afraid to be too optimistic. I will say to you that this is a nice school. We know what we're doing. I ran a school which I founded and operated in Los Angeles for 22 years. I know what I'm doing. We are not just screaming, come and help us. We are saying, give us the opportunity to do what we came here to do, which is to provide academic education and social training for those kids who are in need. But too often, people don't care. I'm the eternal optimist with great trepidation, and I'm hoping that finally, after 2 years, we'll be sent 25 or 30 kids. There are probably 100, 150 kids roaming the streets, not in anybody's school, and these kids need to be in school Security and education, because without an education, you're not going to be able to do anything comfortably other than serve prison time. You're not going to be able to get a job. And at the same time, an overwhelming majority, by the way, of our young kids are being pumped full of drugs. So a little black or brown kid goes to school, they're a little excited and they're highly energized and they're running and they're playing and they're talking too much. Before you know it, a counselor's brought in and they sit the kid down with the parent and they say, well, this kid's hyper. We need to give the kid some Ritalin or another reasonable facsimile of mind-altering drugs. So by the time the kid's 10, 11, then the kid is on 8 or 10 drugs. He's been very mild, very well-behaved, very quiet, and hasn't taken in any new information at all. Still can't read or write by the time he's 14 or 15 years old. And by the time he's 16 or 17, the only thing he is going to be able to do, to some extent, is sell drugs. Most of our kids are introduced to drugs on school campuses, and you know how? Because the big drug dealers give these small-time kids who call themselves junior drug dealers, they give them little samples to give their schoolmates on campus. And of course, if the kid doesn't want to take it, very often they're bullied into it. It's the same kind of thing they do to the young girls. If you don't engage in sexual activity, we're going to beat up your mother, or we're going to beat up your brother, or we're going to kill your sister. And so these kids are frightened into doing things that even cause many of them to commit suicide. Nobody talks about the number of black and brown kids committing suicide in the streets of Baltimore every day. Because if it's not talked about, then no one will see where there's an interest, that anyone should be interested or concerned with what's happening to these kids. These kids are dropping dead like flies from the use of drugs, especially fentanyl. Who cares? They don't. Nobody cares about the system. The importance of these black and brown kids and poor white kids in the inner city is when a seat is filled in the classroom, that school gets more money. I find it very interesting that there are hundreds of cases of teachers passing students on to the next grade while the student has never done a lick of work, never passed in a single assignment. So the kids are happy with it because they're able to pass and they didn't have to do the work. Well, guess what the kid's going to do next semester? Nothing, because the attitude is, I'm going to pass anyway. So again, I'm reaching out to our Jewish sisters and brothers. I'm asking for your help. And all I want you to do is connect with the powers that be on my behalf and let them know that I'm not trying to run anything other than Maryland Progressive Institute. We came to do a good job. But without your help, nothing's going to happen. I'm asking my Irish and my Italian and my Greek sisters and brothers and those who are members of the Catholic order, I'm asking for your help. The same people who made the call to the window dressing inward people downtown and told them to not refer any kids to this school. Please have them reverse that situation, because it is not good. I'll be okay if I decide that I want to turn my business into a job for myself. I've spent some $650,000 of personal funds over the last 2.5 years to get this school to where it is so that it can provide services to one child when I should have at least 30 children here. But at the end of the day, I will only be let in if I go to one of the 5 controlling families on my knees and agree to give my business to them if they will let me run my business on peanuts. They would get the same money that I would be getting. The difference is they will take the biggest chunk off the top, which will not leave enough for anyone to run a good, viable business on. I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to visit with you. Again, what is going on here in the city of Baltimore is unbelievable. And had I not been blessed with the opportunity to experience it firsthand, I would have difficulty in understanding or even believing anyone who might have said this level of racism is going on in Baltimore. You go to the public schools out in the white areas, everything is primo. You have new technical centers being built. They have the best of everything. And here in the city of Baltimore, where the greatest need is, kids are sitting in classrooms that are so cold that they are breathing, they're exhaling fog on cold days. They're sitting in classroom sweating during the summertime because they don't have heating or air conditioning. On occasion, a teacher will have an electrical heater, which they may or may not share with the student. And then finally, many of our young black and brown kids have given up on school because their attitude is you can't trust the white teachers. Most of the teachers, some 70% of the teachers and counselors are white. Some of the complaints I've gotten have been by way of kids saying things like, well, you know, when I have a question or don't understand something, I hold up my hand. And after holding up my hand, sometimes 5 and 10 minutes, the teacher won't call on me to ask me whether or not I have a question. So I just get frustrated and say, to heck with it, I'm not going to try anymore. I'm asking for your help. And again, if I'm wrong, America, let us through like you let the Jews through. Give me an opportunity. Give me access to economic opportunity. And I say that unreluctantly. Some of my best friends are Jewish. And most of the ones who know what I'm dealing with are in deep sympathy for me and certainly empathize. If I'm wrong, let us through like you let our Irish sisters and brothers through, our Greek sisters and brothers through, those who are members of the Catholic order, not just those, anybody. Black people have never done anything to white America to deserve what I'm having to learn now in 2019. It is unreal. Our black and brown inner city kids are not being taught anything, and nobody cares. These kids are going to be rendered dysfunctional. And yes, they'll be in jail by the time they're 21, 22 years old. And I want to leave you with this. A lot of the white parents with special needs kids, especially those who are in the more affluent areas, these people are funneled special education dollars out of the back door at the Baltimore City Public School system. They are given money through little fake programs that they set up, and these parents are able then to take those monies and pay top dollar to have their children sufficiently or properly educated. Well, where does that money come from? It comes from monies that are targeted or put in place for the sake of all the children, not just those that are among the affluent. Tens of millions of dollars are absconded with every quarter. Money disappears, money goes into the general fund, and nobody is accountable. And again, I say to the governor's office, you know exactly what's going on. You don't have to wonder. You, along with the state, as well as anyone else with any inside connection, understand fully what's going on. And you're just as guilty as anyone else when it comes to sacrificing the futures of our children. I say to President Donald Trump, you talked about dragging the swamp. Start in your backyard, which is Baltimore. The school system is totally out of control. It is guilty of racism, segregating schools, and the maltreatment of anyone who appears to have any potential. Our kids are going to class and sitting in classrooms all day and not even opening a book and being given passing grades. We're in trouble. And then when those kids show up at your door or my door 10 years from now with a gun in your face to rob you, who will we be able to blame for that? Nobody. As an ordained minister, as a decent citizen who has tried to do all of the right things for all my life, I'm asking the powers that be, the Good Old Boys Network, to help. Again, the head administrator over at Manseth told me and my assistant, my business associate, that no one was going to send us kids. Another administrator at the state level told us that we were not going to be sending kids. Well, if that is the case, then why is it that the state and the Baltimore City school system doesn't declare a moratorium? And then you would not have other people like Andrew Manley coming in with the hope of making a difference when you already know that you're not going to allow it. Within the circle of the Big Five, monopolies here, they circulate these kids from one school to another. There are kids here who have been to the same school 3 or 4 times. But when it comes to an school on the outside who's not part of the Good Old Boys Network, when it comes to an inward person who's not owned by the white power structure, I seem to have no chance. I thank you for your time, and I'm not through yet. I have a lot to say, a lot to do, and a long way to go, but I tell you, there is going to be a change. I've been threatened 3 times, and things are different from what they used to be in the minds of a lot of people that I know. When people begin to threaten you because you become a threat to their cash flow, it's very serious. I don't have the money that they have, but thank God I have enough to keep myself overly insured, so just in case I'm dropped 6 feet before it's God's will to call me, then my insurance money will be enough to also call down your children and your grandchildren. Not interested in you so much. What goes around comes around. Don't put a hair on my head, and I don't put one on your children or your grandchildren, even from the deep. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Have a good day.